Kaya Wangalelu, Shalavalangada, Kamadalahi Samithi. Hello, loves, it's yours truly, Zazar Cordovana, and I would like to give you a warm welcome to the Kingdom of Atlantea, the Kingdom of Atlantis. Welcome to Thala Nation, your source for authentic Atlantean culture, heritage, spirituality, and language. So, my loves, Shalava Shalava, how are you? How is your love today? Hopefully, your love is well. Hopefully, your love is beautiful, and you're staying safe in these days. So, my loves, today I'm going to present to you Atlantean cultural, or I'm going to present to you the Atlantean cultural sphere and migration. Now, in the past, I did make a video about the migration of the indigenous Thala people from Northwest Africa to the Americas via the islands. But in this video, I'm going to go a little more in depth on that. Okay. So, with that being said, let's get started. And it's early, so if I stumble my words and whatnot, please forgive me. So let's get started. When one learns about authentic Atlantean culture, you know, everyone is quick to wanna learn about all the technological advancements. Um, People want to see the Atlanteans as like gods or come, from space and what have you and whatnot. But it's important to distinguish between pop culture Atlantis and the real Atlantis. And this channel is about the real Atlantis. Okay. What you see here is the cultural sphere of the indigenous Atlanteans. Okay. This island, as an oracle of the ancient antediluvian Atlantean civilization, in a spiritual dream and vision from Mother, I would like to tell you or teach you that this island right here, which many call the island of Atlantis, was indigenously called Animola. Animola. Okay? But despite that, the Atlanteans did not originate on this island. According to my spiritual dreams and visions, the Atlanteans actually were indigenous to this region right here in Northwest Africa, where Morocco and Western Sahara is. And mind you, this was a point in time before the Great Flood or antediluvian um, Atlantis, or Africa, I should say. So all of this land was not desert. It was actually lush savanna and forest. Okay, many elephants, lions, giraffes, and what have you were roaming all throughout North Africa during the time of the Atlanteans, especially during the time of the primitive age of their people. And the Atlanteans date back to this region 320,000 BC. Okay, that is the genesis of their culture, of their people. Now, their ancestors were called the Azani people, which the Azani people were a group of ancient North African peoples who roamed and settled all throughout North Africa. Okay, and the Azani people who migrated to the Northwest African coast later became the Thala people. Now, Thalanthia is the indigenous name of the Atlanteans, but originally they were called the Kingdom of Thalampia. Thalampia. Okay, these islands that you see here are all the islands of Macaronesia today. A lot of these islands are no longer visible today because of the rising sea levels and also the geological um, effects that happened during that point in time around 10,000 years ago. Okay, and I will talk more about that in future videos. So what you have here, this is Cape Verde. Okay, Th this these are the Canarian Islands. Okay, this is Madeira, which is part of Portugal. These these islands are no longer above sea level. Today they are seamounts, and they are known as the Great Meteor Seamounts. Okay, and sure enough, some of these islands are actually named Atlantis and Plato and what have you. And this island, well, this is the Azores Plateau, and what remains of Animala are the Azores. Okay, so all of this area, this region is the heart, soul, and the genesis of the Atlanteans, especially in Northwest Africa right here. All right, loves. So now we have this. So when people talk about Atlantis, people want to always talk about the island of Atlantis. Okay, and people try to pinpoint, where the Atlanteans truly were, whether they were, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, whether they were in Africa, in Europe, North America, what have you. But in reality, the Atlanteans in their most humble beginnings were a nomadic people. So before they even came to the Northwest African shores, they were nomads roaming around antediluvian North Africa. Okay, so in being a nomadic culture, though they settled the Northwest African coast as their home, they began to set sail to various islands beyond the continent or the mainland, as they were a maritime culture. And this is how they later discovered the islands that used to exist in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, as well as Iberia. And from their migrations to the islands and the outer islands, they later found and explored um, antediluvian North America. So there were three cultural regions of Atlantis. There was East Atlantis, which was the Atlantis of Africa. There's Central Atlantis, which was insular. These were the This was the Atlantis of the outer islands. And then you had West Atlantis. This was the Atlantis of the Americas. Okay, and all developed under their own period of time. Okay, so generation 3, 2, and generation 1. And I will explain the generations in a later video. Okay, loves? Um, so this is the original map that I made in a previous video about the migrations of the Atlanteans. Okay, and I rewatched that video and I did kind of go over, a little bit about what you see here, but I don't think I went into depth about it. But so as I said earlier, this was Thala land. This was the original homeland of the Atlanteans. And this is the same region that the historian Diodorus puts the indigenous Atlanteans as well. Okay, historically, this area was called the land of the gods, mainly because the Atlanteans were viewed as an advanced civilization, not not primarily in technology or innovation, but also in moral standards as well, as noted by the historian Diodorus. Okay, Plato himself says that the story of Atlantis, the oral tale, originated in Africa. Okay, so with that being said, what you see here is what I saw in a spiritual vision and dream from Mother as an oracle that I'm giving to you. Okay, all the information that I have about this ancient civilization of Atlantea comes directly from my spiritual visions and dreams from the mother of Atlantis. Okay, and I've been in communication with this spirit for over 20 years. So, you know, this is what inspired me to start this channel, because I couldn't hold this information in too much longer. I had to share it, whether people will will accept it or will blow it off. But you know, this is just my purpose here, to teach you these things, to share this information that I've been receiving from Mother. So, with that being said, with the migration of the Atlanteans, according to how I saw any spiritual visions and dreams, They were indigenous to this area, and they were descendants of the Azani people, who were ancient African nomads who lived throughout um, the deeply fertile lands of North Africa. Okay, I saw them migrate to the south. I saw Thala people migrate to the north into Europe. And I also saw a band of people who resemble Caucasians. I'm not going to say they were Caucasians, but they resemble Caucasians coming from the east, okay, into this area. I'm not really sure where exactly they were coming from. All I saw was a group of people who looked Caucasian coming from the west in the spiritual vision. And also in this vision, I saw the Thala people, and them being a maritime culture, they were avid shipbuilders. So they built these great vessels, and they sailed off the mainland coast of West Africa and discovered all these islands. Okay, so island hopping from Northwest Africa to the Canary Islands, Cape Verde, and what have you, they eventually landed upon the shores of Animola, okay, the big island. The vast majority of the Thala people remained in this island, but there were some Thala people who continued migrating westward until they became um, until they discovered North America. Okay, and I put the time frame 250,000 to 200,000 BC because this was the time frame that I saw in this vision from Mother. This being the first. Okay, and the Atlanteans who migrated all the way to North America became the Aboriginal Americans. And in later visions, I then begin to see Asiatic peoples come from the west. I don't believe they came from the north through the Bering Strait because, I mean, in my visions, how I saw it, it just seemed impossible that humans could walk from northern Siberia through the Bering Strait down to America simply because of this 10,000 feet of ice and snow. And mind you, there was no transportation back then. They were on foot. So there was no land. I mean, it just seems, I don't know. The Asiatics, I honestly believe that coming from Asia into North America, they more than likely came along the coast of Northwest North America. But I don't believe they came from the Bering Strait because it just seems surreal to me personally. But, you know, and then also I saw a group of Pacific Islanders coming from the west into the western shores of the Americas. And the point of this is to teach you that, you know, everyone believes that North America was settled by one race of people, and that is simply not true. Over the course of thousands of years, many waves of people from all over the world came and settled in the Americas. The Atlanteans were the first. They were the Aborigines of North America. They were descendants of the Azani in Northwest Africa, or in North Africa in general. They were nomads. And then you have the Asiatics who came from Asia, who came along the Northwest African or the Northwest American coast. Then you have the Melanesians who came from the west through the islands or by way of the islands of the Pacific, Mu. And then you have the Europeans, Aboriginal, and also the Caucasian looking peoples who also later, even long before the ice sheet melted, I saw Europeans migrate from Europe through Iceland along the coast of Greenland into North America. So you had people from all over the world, different races of people coming to the Americas long before Columbus. Okay, the Atlanteans were the oldest ones, and simply because of convenience. I mean, it is much easier for an Aboriginal or an indigenous people to sail from here to here than go the long way from here, Africa, all the way around the world to the Americas. Okay, and I think, and by these islands are no longer emerged. I want to point that out. A lot of these islands are now submerged into the ocean. And in the later video, I will talk about exactly how these islands sunk. Okay, so Now, some people have brought it to my attention that, it is impossible for the indigenous Atlanteans or the Aborigines from Africa to migrate westerly from Africa to North America through the North Atlantic because of the gyres. Okay. Now, while that may be true to a certain extent, the Atlanteans were avid shipbuilders. They were truly a people of the sea. They knew the sea, they mastered the sea. They knew where to sail, how to sail, they knew the ways of the currents. So if the Atlanteans wanted to get somewhere, they were going to get somewhere, and currents was not going to stop them from getting there. I also want to mention the Sargasso Sea. The Sargasso Sea is a region of the Atlantic Ocean where it's, I wouldn't say dead, but the waters are relatively calm. And during this point in time, the gyre would have helped the Atlanteans who sailed from Northwest African coast to the island to get directly to North America. Okay, specifically these islands. These waters are dead waters. So if the Aborigines from Africa are on this island, okay, it wouldn't it wouldn't be much difficulty for them to sail from the coast of Anguilla to these islands in Lake Bermuda into the shores of North America, especially with this gyre, with the indigenous Atlanteans from the southern coast of Anguilla get help with the gyre straight into the Bahamas, or become the Lucayans and so forth. So this is also what I want to point it out. Okay, with this map I've showing you, and the southward currents would also help the Atlanteans who migrated to these islands, seaward, Canaries and the Cape Verde, swoop down through here and become the Aborigines of these islands as well. Okay, and I want to point out that the Thala weren't the only ones to migrate from Northwest Africa. There were also the Olu people, as I saw in Spiritual Dream and Vision. I only had two visions about the Olu people, the antediluvian Olu people, but all I know from Mother is that they were really close kin to the Atlanteans, and they lived around Senegal in this area right here, and they also were avid shipbuilders. I don't know if they learned it from the Atlanteans or it was just a talent of their own culture, but I did see the Olu people not only migrate into this area of Northwest Africa or Southwest Africa, but also migrate from the coast of West Africa, this region, into South America, into the Amazon, Brazil, what have you. So the Atlanteans weren't the only indigenous African people who migrated from here to there. Okay, that's something I want to point out as well. But the vast majority of Aborigines of the Americas are direct descendants of the Thala people. Okay, this is how they got here, because they came from here via here. Okay, and this is another map I made, focused on the Azani people, but just want to show you, the migrations of these specific people. Now people will say, it's a common theory that all people came from Africa, and while that theory is, I don't have a problem with that theory. I just believe that we should be more open-minded about it. You know, But the only reason why I place the origins of the Atlanteans in this region is because I did have a vision of I had a vision from Mother of the Thala people originating from the Azani people who originated in this region 2.5 million years ago, alongside a race of humanoid beings called the Nuank. Okay, and I will talk more about the Nuank in a later video as well. Okay, so, and when you bring up maps of modern day migrations, or not modern day, but the migrations of humanity from Africa, theoretically, all the migrations start in Africa and go west. You never see any map of any migration from Africa, or I mean, not going west, but east. You never see any migration from Africa of humanity going west. Okay, so I just found that interesting. And this is also a map of the Atlantic Basin showing you there's Animala, which is the Azores Plateau. This is Atlantis. Okay. And hold that thought. I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully you just skipped through the video. But I had to get my book, Plato's Atlantis, Timaeus, and Critias, because it's something I want to teach and explain. So I'm going to read a passage in this book, and I want you to follow my cursor. Okay, these are the words of Plato. Many great and wonderful deeds are recorded of your state in our histories, but one of them exceeds all the rest in greatness and valor. For these histories tell of a mighty power which unprovoked made an expedition against the whole of Europe and Asia, and to which your city put an end. This power came forth out of the Atlantic Ocean, for in those days the Atlantic was navigable, and there was an island situated in the front of the straits, which are by you called the Pillars of Hercules. This is the Strait of Gibraltar. Okay, that's what he's referring to, which is larger than Libya and Asia put together, and was the way to other islands. Okay, and from these you might pass to the whole of the opposite continent, which surrounded the true ocean, and he's referring to North America. For this sea, which is within the straits of, Hercules, of Heracles, the Mediterranean, is only a harbor, having a narrow entrance. But that other sea is a real sea, and the surrounding land may be most truly called a boundless continent. So Plato is making a distinction between the sea that he's referring to, the Mediterranean, and this great sea, which beyond is surrounded by a boundless continent. Okay, so he's not really he's not. A lot of people pinpoint Atlantis being, only in the Mediterranean or somewhat, or what have you. But in reality, according to Plato, Atlantis was in the Atlantic Ocean. A great power came out of the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, now people want to say that various um, archaeological discoveries in the Mediterranean and Africa and other regions of the world could pinpoint to Atlantis as a civilization. But what people should really understand is that Atlantis wasn't just it was not just the island. Okay, Atlantis had influence all over the world. Okay, they had colonies and bases all over the world. Okay, the heart and it's just this region was the heart in the homeland of the Thala people. Okay, so here you have this again. Okay, Plato mentions the harbor, the Straits of Hercules, the island, which led to other islands, which were surrounded by a boundless continent. So are you getting like a visual um explanation of what he was really talking about and referring to? Okay. Now, many people will bring to my attention, So how do you really know that the indigenous Atlanteans originate from Africa? Like these, because I'm saying that in my spiritual dreams and visions from Mother, the Aborigines of America are direct descendants of the Thala people, the ancient indigenous Africans who migrated from West Africa via the islands to the Americas. And when we think of Native Americans or Indians, the first thing we think of are people with Asiatic phenotype. And I just explained a while ago that America was very ethnically diverse and racially diverse. Different waves of people from all over the world came and settled in the Americas. My focus is the Aborigines of America, those who came from the East via the islands. People will ask me, are there any, historical documents or records of Aborigines or Native Americans who have, um, I should say, a melanated or Australoid or Africoid phenotype appearance? And yes, there were many European explorers who came over to the Americas and found indigenous Aborigines who look like this. It's just this is American history that is not taught, but nevertheless is true. And people would ask, where did these people go? Go? Where are these American Indians who look like this? You know, where are these Indians? Were they just wiped out by disease? I will end this video with this. It all began with this man, Walter Plecker. He was responsible for reclassifying indigenous Americans who looked African as black or Negro and colored. And that is a historical fact. And I will talk more about him and more about the descendants of the Atlanteans, bloodkin and spiritkin, in a later video. But with that being said, I'm gonna leave it at that. So it was yours truly, Zaza Cordovana, and I hope you have a beautiful day, a beautiful night, wherever you are in this world. I'm a bloodkin Atlanteans. I'm a spiritkin Atlanteans. I love you all, and stay safe. Till next video. I love you guys. Bye.